Good morning, my friends. It is a beautiful day after a week of rain, and Sam and I love rain, so we've definitely not minded the more relaxed, quiet approach to our week. But I'm definitely excited to take you guys back into my kitchen, make a few delicious recipes, and today I'm actually planning on chatting about a topic that you guys voted on in our YouTube community posts area. And that is, has bus life been all it's cracked up to be a year on? We've actually been living technically on the road in the bus for a year and a half, living rent-free for the most part, and I'll get into all of that as we talk more. But I thought before we go into the bus and spend the day in there, I'd show you guys around because it is just so stunning, so peaceful with all of the bird calls. The grass is so green at the moment. Yeah, so enjoy. The other night I made a delicious chicken bone broth with veggie scraps, and this is going to be one of the main ingredients for one of the things we're cooking today. Alright, I've got my kitchen all tidied up and ready for a cooking spree today. I love these cooking days with you all because it gives me an opportunity to give the kitchen a deep clean, and that is still one of the big perks of bus life for us, is that having a smaller kitchen, having a smaller space, it's so much easier to keep on top of cleaning because it's constantly in front of you, that it never feels like a big job. It only takes me maybe 30 minutes and I've got the stovetop clean, the dishes clean, the bench tops clean, and I'm ready for another day of preserving or cooking or whatever I have in mind. I'm really excited today for the recipes that we're going to try because there are actually 3 recipes that I've been wanting to have a go at making for a really long time. They've been saved on my phone or saved in my memory, waiting for the day where I finally take the leap to do them. So today I'm going to make a traditional Russian red soup. I'm sure some of you guys would know it. It's called Borche. The main ingredients in it are beetroots and cabbage and tomatoes. It's so delicious and one of my favorites, and for some reason has just left me overwhelmed with trying to make it. But recently on my trip down to my mum's in Melbourne, she made it with me and it really wasn't as daunting as I thought it was. It just has a bit of prep work and then it's pretty straightforward. So that's one of our recipes today. The other recipe I want to make is another one that I've been wanting to make ever since we got into the bus, and that is stovetop buns. I'm going to try and make these in my cast iron, and they do get made on the stovetop, so I'm hoping we have enough gas or induction, so electricity. It is a sunny day, so we might get a win out of that. But if this works out, being able to bake bread again, even if it's not technically baked, is going to be game-changing. One thing I still truly miss about having a home, or just a feature that we didn't put into our bus that I feel like I wish we had, is not having an oven. And I love baking, I love making breads, I miss making sourdough, I miss making muffins and cakes and cookies and pizzas. It's good for our gut because we're not eating a lot of flours and a lot of baked goods, but I'm definitely missing like the slowness and the process of baking. And then the third recipe we're going to try is brisket. Now traditionally brisket might be smoked for like 16 to 18 hours to really break down all of the fats and the ligaments and all the things that make the meat tough until they're broken down. But I'm going to have a go at making a brisket on the stovetop, or perhaps even, depending on if the day continues to be this beautiful, we might even get a fire going outside. And I'm going to use my cast iron pot and make a 4 to 6 hour brisket stew. And I'm hoping that it'll be just as tender and break apart as the 16 to 18 hour version. But since it's a new recipe that I've never tried before, only time will tell. So I guess with all that being said, let's jump into recipe number 1, which is going to be the Borche. Cabbage forms a pretty significant part of the Russian diet. I think it's something that grows really well out in the cold, and I also know that right now here in Australia we're entering winter very soon, and cabbage is probably on the menu in everyone's gardens. So if you guys are interested in seeing some more traditional Russian cabbage type of recipes, I actually have so many that I could share, and I would love to do a video dedicated to that, so let me know down below. I'm going to add that beautiful broth back in. Alright, we're going to get into making this. So as far as the topic that we've picked to chat about today, I think I could cover this topic in so much more detail and talk almost endlessly about it, but I want to be mindful of your time and be mindful of how long I'm chatting in this video. So I'm going to try kind of keep it to 3 main big questions that we've had, and ideas or topics around living in our bus and whether it's worth it. One of the questions we probably get asked the most from our family, from our friends, from followers, from strangers, from anyone that finds out we live on a bus is, do we have enough space and do we plan on getting something bigger? Are we looking into rentals again? Where are we going to live? Especially now that Bubba is on her way. And I don't know if people truly believe it when we do answer this question for them, but honestly, we have more than enough space in the bus, and I think we will have more than enough space for at least the next 2-3 years while our kids grow up, while they're in that like infant toddler stage. Now, I don't know the answer to that for sure because I've never been a mum. I don't know what kind of kids I'm going to have, but the whole point of living in a bus for us was that the space inside is enough to lounge in, it's enough to sleep in, it's enough to cook in, but of course it's not enough to entertain in. It's never going to be enough to, I don't know, do a whole exercise routine or go dancing and have all this space around you. And the purpose of that is so that we are forced to do those things outside. Not forced, but we have the pleasure of doing those things outside, and our outdoor space is much larger than our indoor space. Now, I will say that getting a bigger place has crossed our minds, and perhaps in the future that will be in the cards for us, but mainly not because we feel like we need more space, but because we would like to start entertaining again. We would like to host our families easily up here and have room for them. We often have my mum, my sister, my niece coming up to visit us each year, and at the moment we don't have somewhere where they can come and stay. So that is definitely a downside of living in our bus at the moment, is that we do only really have enough room for our family and then for people to come and visit and spend some time outside, but not as much time to actually stay over. Another question that kind of fits into this space as well is whether that's been a challenge for us to try to find places to park the bus. So for the last 1.5 years, we've had lots of really generous friends who have had property in rural areas that have allowed us to stay on their property. The place we're staying at right now, it's crazy to realize that we've been here for almost 6 months, and very comfortably too. We've been very respectful, we've kept the communication up, and so I think it's just created a space where we've been able to catch our breath and relax for a little while. But as far as finding a place to stay, and technically we become homeless on those transition days when we don't know where we're going to be next and we have a timeline to get out, and that can be quite stressful on its own. There's always options like caravan parks, there's always options like showgrounds, free camping, but the process of actually packing up our space, moving the bus, it takes a lot out of us. It causes a lot of anxiety, whether real or not, and I think the less we move, the better we are. So we are in the works at the moment of trying to find a permanent block of land where we can feel secure being in for a while. And I think the reason for that is just to stop that anxiety and stress of not knowing where we're going to be next. We're going to cook those on a high heat until they lose their colour and turn like a whitish hue. To get nice thin cabbage, just keep the cabbage turning so that the pieces are fairly even and fairly small. It's a good trick to know. The cabbage and the carrot and tomato are the last things to go in, so I'm just going to put them all together. The heat is off, just to clear my space so I can make the next recipe. You guys, look at the size of the bump. She's really growing now. I actually upsized all my clothes because I knew that I was going to be pregnant in winter time this year, and some of them are officially like still not going on. So this vest can only be worn with one button. Literally 2 days ago I had it buttoned up all the way and it's already like too tight. Alright, I'm waiting for this to go translucent and pink. Then I'm going to add my potato, cook my potato for about 10 minutes until the potato is fairly cooked, add in my last bits of ingredients, and that's pretty much it. I haven't salted my broth, so I'm going to give it a nice generous bit, can always add more later. And we're actually going to move on to the stovetop bread. I'm a little nervous for it, but I think it's going to go well. I don't have any sugar, so of course we're using honey. Now this will need to rise for a little while so we can put it to the side and work on other things too. Okay. Scales, probably one of my favourite tools in the kitchen. I'll make sure all the recipes that I am making I will put down in the description box so that if you want to try any of them out you can. The next question I'm going to focus on is kind of related to the reason why we built the bus. So we got priced out of the market even though we had a deposit because we moved states and just the way that things went. So we decided about a year or two into feeling pretty sorry for ourselves that we didn't get ourselves into a good position in the market, we decided that we would build the bus in order to have a home, and that way when we one day bought some land to move onto, we had a bus to do that with. Now the other reason we were choosing to do that is because each time we went to the bank and tried to get a loan, a lot of the properties that were on sale at very expensive prices, mind you, were land only or half built home without a DA, and so that made it really tricky to try to buy the property and secure the loan for it through the bank because they wanted to have a proper house that they were investing in. So I guess the question is, did the bus put us into a better position to secure land now? Did what we intended to make happen occur, or what's going on with securing property for a proper homestead? And unfortunately, the bus has not opened up doors. So because this is technically a dwelling on wheels, it is more classed as a caravan than it is a proper home, especially because it doesn't have a septic system. That would need to be one of the first things we put in, and then we would need to work on getting a DA to build a proper house, even though this is a proper house to us. So regardless, it hasn't panned out that way, but what the bus has allowed us to have is the freedom of this lifestyle that we've wanted to live. We currently live on, I'd say, half an income to a full income a week, a fortnight, and we are doing pretty well. I mean, sure, we miss out on certain luxuries. Sure, it means we don't have like the amounts of savings we used to and the disposable income we had to travel, but for the most part, like, our cost of living is very low, and having half an income to a full income is more than enough, and then anything extra that we're able to make we can squirrel away for one day buying that property that we wish to buy. Getting the bus has given us so much security and peace of mind, but it will mean that one day when we are ready to buy property, we have a home to move into while we build, or while we have a house built for us, whatever happens in the future. But for now, we're kind of at a standstill when it comes to land. We still look every now and again, but our income just isn't in a position to allow us to invest in it. And at the same time, we don't want to lose the freedom that we have at the moment. By getting a mortgage, especially a hefty one, which is what we would have to do with prices around here, we would be tied down to jobs that may not fulfill us, and it defeats the purpose of being more present in our children's lives as they're growing up while they're young. We'll have time to do it later on. My parents didn't buy property until they were 40. And there's plenty of people that just live in rentals for their whole life, and that is completely fine if that is what our destiny is going to be. So we are not feeling any pressure on ourselves. We are just making sure to keep relaying that information in our brains so that we don't feel like we're not achieving goals that really are unrealistic. When you knead bread, the first time you mix it is just to hydrate all the flour so that there's no dry bits. Then we'll let it sit for 10 minutes and then we'll give it a proper knead. By doing it this way, it'll make it a lot easier to knead. So, okay, we'll just leave that. Okay, on to the brisket. Given that my heritage is Jewish, I am surprised I haven't made a Jewish brisket before. So this is a first, but apparently it's more moist and tender than the smoked counterpart, so let's hope for the best. Feels like my brisket's still a bit frozen. The next question that I'm going to kind of talk about as far as living on the bus a year on and whether it's always cracked up to be is just the general like living maintenance costs associated with bus life. You guys may have noticed that we haven't traveled for a while. We did a stint of about 6 months and really only about a month of it was traveling. And the reason we haven't traveled since, one is that security. We need to be able to make money, and currently we don't have a way to make enough money while on the road. So we do need to come back to a standard job where we can actually earn an income to live and survive. Cost of living is only going up, it's not going down. So this is definitely something that we have to do. And I think a lot of bus lifers actually do this as well. I don't think it's very standard that you go out on the road with huge amounts of money and just see how it goes. Like, that's a pretty big risk. Usually you would work in between and then, you know, travel once you have the money for it. Now, our bus actually ended up having like a fuel issue towards the end of our trip, which was pretty scary and meant we were in a position where we didn't know what would happen. So we have come back, and the goal for the next month is actually to get that sorted out. I think Sam's just needing to redo some of the fuel lines and potentially we might have to flush the fuel tank, which will be a pretty big expensive job and might mean we have to vacate the bus for a while. But that's just the process of what we need to do, and it's better to do it now before baby comes as opposed to later when, you know, we're more tied down. Don't worry though, that doesn't mean that we're not looking forward to traveling again in the future, and we think that definitely this lifestyle that we're building for ourselves ties into being able to go on, you know, week-long trips and then come back to work and balance that out. We just kind of need to stay put for a little while, of course, and see how things go, see what kind of baby we get, and just understand a little bit more about the position we're going to be in the next little while, which is hard to predict right now. Just gonna heat that up. How are we looking? So beetroot's getting there. You can see it's kind of like an orangey colour. So we're looking for white, so a little bit longer. As far as maintenance goes for the actual bus, we pay rego every 3 months. That hasn't been too bad. It's quite affordable. It's definitely more affordable than renting a house around here at the moment. To put into perspective on prices, I think rentals are going for, there are no rentals first of all, but when there is rentals they're going for a minimum of like $500 a week, while we're paying the registration for our bus is about $500 every 3 months, which massive difference already, and you can see why we've been able to reduce our income so significantly. That can be another topic that I can talk about, of how we're kind of affording to be able to do that. If you guys are interested, we can do another cook and chat around income. One thing I think that is worth noting though with bus life is the maintenance that comes with living off-grid in a bus on a regular basis. Because we have a composting toilet, we do need to clean it out every time it gets full. This is fairly easy, especially because we separate our urine from our number twos, and so that makes it a lot easier to deal with, because essentially we've got manure and soil, and then we have the liquid urine, which technically is grey water, because I mean, if you think about it, how many of us have gone camping and peed outside, right? How many boys out there would prefer to pee outside during a party compared to coming inside to a toilet? I don't know if that's just my husband or if that's standard all around, but yeah, it's not very harmful for the environment as long as you're responsible and spreading it out rather than having it in one concentrated spot. Now, as far as how often we change over our toilet, it really depends how often we are at home compared to out and about at friends' houses or like doing whatever. But I think usually we maybe go 2 weeks before we need to change over the bag. And then the urine tank gets emptied maybe once a week, sometimes 2 weeks as well. So it's not too big of a chore. Usually when Sam's filling up our water tanks, which by the way, he's improved the system and we're able to get the full 400 litres of water that we should, which is lasting us a lot longer. But he has a habit of, when he does the water tanks, he'll also go and look at the urine tank. And then of course the bin inside, which is the soil and manure, just gets emptied out as it's full, just like with a standard bin. And usually we take that along with our standard rubbish over to the dump or to a bin, and yeah, that's how we deal with that. It's really not that bad. It's quite clean. There's no smells involved. Yeah, not any more than using a normal toilet. You're just more responsible for doing it yourself as opposed to having someone else do it for you and having that out of sight, out of mind thing going on. One cost we are noticing has really increased for us, and I'm not sure why, is the cost of running a generator to power and recharge our batteries. We do use technology quite a lot, especially at night time, and so we are finding that our solar panels just aren't charging up our batteries fast enough, whether it's the position we're in, whether it's the solar panels being older, or whether our system just isn't set up efficiently enough. I'm not sure, but in the next month or so we actually are upgrading our solar system and hopefully reducing the cost of getting fuel to run that generator, because that's becoming almost a every other day job for Sam to get more fuel for the generator, which runs really loudly to run our batteries. So hopefully upgrading the solar system will mean stepping away from buying that fuel and also take another chore away. As far as everything else for the bus goes, like, I don't think there's been too many big costs, so we are definitely happy about that. Oh wow, I don't know if you can see that, beautiful. I'm going to add my potatoes in. Oh, yum. Look at that colour. Add garlic, tablespoon of mustard, which I don't have tablespoons, so 3 teaspoons. And you're supposed to add tomato paste, so 2 tablespoons of tomato paste for this recipe. I don't have tomato paste, but recently I experimented with adding Vegemite instead of tomato paste into a bolognese, and it gave it a really delicious umami flavor. This was influenced by a friend of mine who did this to her meatballs. So we're going to experiment, since this is an experimental kind of video, and we're going to add some Vegemite to this. Tune in later to see if I regret that. One. Stuck. Fresh tomato. Wow. Oh my god, yum. We're gonna add our spices. So I have rosemary because I don't have time. So just a generous pinch. Cracked black pepper. Perfect. I've got the Borche on a small heat at the back. I've got the brisket on the smallest heat I can possibly do at the front, and we're going to let that slow cook for about 2 hours, check it, and then put it back on for another 2 hours. I was going to use one of these pots for my bread, but now I'm going to have to wait for the Borche to be finished so that I can do the bread in that, which is fine. All good, we're just going to knead it again. Alright, our Borche is all done. The cabbage doesn't need long to cook. I'll show you guys how we serve it up. Some people grate their garlic in, but I like, in our family, we just chop it up real small. And then we serve it with some sour cream. Yum. Alright, I've got my pot washed and I'm going to make up these buns. Wow, look at how much it's risen. So we're going to do one last knead and then shape these and let them rise one last time before we bake them on low heat. I've also decided I will use the induction cooktop to do the bread, just because our burners run pretty hot and I don't want to burn these. I also wanted to add on one last thing about living on the bus and how it's been the last little while. I think one thing that we were kind of hopeful would happen and hasn't quite happened is the fact that we don't have a garden, and to garden in someone else's space just doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel like you've got autonomy or the ability to do whatever you want. So that's definitely one thing that, because we've got the home and we kind of share the land with other people or just wherever we are, it's not actually land that belongs to us. That's definitely a bit of a downside, is that I feel like I can't do a hobby that is such a big part of me. But I'm managing by doing what I can. I'm managing by focusing elsewhere, and of course at this season in my life it's kind of good that I don't have the pressure of my own garden to maintain and look after, so I can actually relax because my energy levels are not what they used to be. I've been starting to think a little bit about maybe accessing a community garden in the area. We've got quite a few of them, and that could perhaps be a way to honor that hobby and do something without, you know, having to have my own space for it. Don't know yet. My little buns, I'm gonna let them rise and then I'll show you guys what all of this looks like when it's done. But as always, thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks for the chat, for the space to open up about things that are going on, things that are on our mind. If there's any other topics that you're wanting to hear about or recipes you'd like me to share, feel free to drop them below. Otherwise, I really enjoyed putting up a poll to get you guys to choose the question, so I think I'll do that again. I'll come up with like 3 topics and then get you guys to vote. I love the community space on YouTube. I really wish you guys could add to it more than just replying to it, but I think YouTube is having discussions and that is in the works, so for now we can just use it as it is, and hopefully there's more interactivity with it in the future. Wow! So we cook covered on low for 15 minutes. Yum. Don't look like they've done anything. And I don't know how to flip them. No, they have not done anything. So I'm going to raise the heat and turn them. I also didn't oil the bottom, so I think they've stuck. Yikes. So they're coming out okay, but I definitely needed to put baking paper or oil down the bottom, so that's my bad. Other than the fact that they're burnt and stuck, they kind of look okay. Oh, a bit doughy. I have to try this again. Not bad. Oh my god. How juicy that is. I'm gonna let it rest for a bit and then cut against the grain, which is that way. And hopefully that'll be delicious. Yum.